You've probably heard this before. Rich people borrow money, a lot of it, and not just any money. They borrow at rates that would make most people cringe. 8% interest, 9%, sometimes even higher. Your instinct says that's insane. Debt is bad. You should pay cash, build a fortress of savings, and never owe anyone a dime. That's what the financial advice industry has told you for decades. But here's what millionaires actually understand, and it's the opposite of what most people think. The difference between middle-class thinking and wealthy thinking isn't about the amount of money in your account. It's about how you think about leverage and timing. It's about System 2 thinking versus defensive hoarding. Most people operate in System 1, gut reactions, fear-based decisions, and paralysis when markets get scary. When a recession looms, the middle class tightens its grip. They hold cash, they pay off debt, they wait, and they wait, and they wait. Meanwhile, wealthy investors are doing something completely different. They're using that expensive debt strategically. Let's talk about the Dando strategy. This isn't a fancy new concept. It's rooted in basic economic logic, but it requires patience and System 2 thinking, which means deliberate analysis instead of emotional reaction. The Dando strategy works like this. You borrow money at 8% when assets are expensive. You hold that capital. You wait. Then, when a recession hits and assets drop 30, 40, sometimes 50% in value, you deploy that capital. You buy discounted assets with the money you borrowed at 8%, but now you're acquiring them at massive discounts. The math becomes beautiful. You're paying 8% to borrow, but you're buying assets that might generate 12, 15, or 20% returns once the market stabilizes. The 2026 recession that many economists are discussing is exactly the kind of opportunity this strategy targets. We're not talking about market timing in the sense of perfect precision. We're talking about rational expectation setting. For the past 5 years, assets have been priced at historically high multiples. The music will eventually stop. Recessions happen. When they do, prices reset. And when prices reset, the people with dry powder, the people who borrowed at 8% and held it patiently, they're the ones who win. This is where middle-class paralysis enters the picture. Most people can't execute this strategy because they're emotionally attached to the idea of zero debt. They see borrowing as failure. They see cash as safety. So when they have capital, they either spend it or keep it in savings accounts earning 2%. When a recession hits, they either panic and hold even tighter, or they're already out of ammunition. They have no capital to deploy because they've already committed everything to paying down existing debt or holding it in low-yield accounts. Wealthy people think differently. They understand that debt is a tool. An 8% loan is expensive only if you're using it to buy things that don't generate returns. But if you're borrowing at 8% to buy an asset that will generate 15% returns once the market cycle shifts, the math is simple. You're arbitraging the difference. You're using leverage, which is the great multiplier of wealth. The millionaire doesn't feel guilty about owing money. They feel confident about the spread between their borrowing cost and their expected returns. System 2 thinking is essential here. It means you sit down with a spreadsheet, you model scenarios. You ask yourself, what is the probability of a recession in the next 18 to 36 months? What is the historical discount that occurs during recessions? What assets am I targeting? What returns do they historically generate? You do the math. You don't just feel your way into a decision. You calculate. The middle class doesn't do this. They're taught to fear debt, so they never actually learn to analyze it properly. They never develop the mental models to understand when debt is a weapon versus when it's a burden. They operate in System 1. Debt feels scary, so they avoid it. Recession feels scary, so they hoard. They're trapped in a loop of defensive thinking. Here's something worth liking this video for, if it's clicking for you. This isn't about being reckless. It's about being strategic. It's not about leveraging yourself into oblivion. It's about understanding the cycle and positioning yourself to exploit the inevitable downturns that happen in every market economy. The wealthy do this because they've learned to separate emotion from analysis. They can sit through a market crash without panic Because they planned for it. They knew it was coming. They prepared. The 2026 timeline is relevant because we're in a window right now where this strategy can be implemented. If you're thinking about it now, in 2025 or 2026, you have time to borrow at current rates and position yourself. By the time 2027, 2028 arrives and assets are on sale, you'll have the capital ready. You'll be the buyer when everyone else is the seller. You'll be accumulating when prices are lowest. This is the fundamental shift in thinking. Stop asking, how do I eliminate all my debt? Start asking, how do I use debt strategically to build wealth faster? Stop asking, how do I hoard the most cash? Start asking, how do I deploy capital at the point of maximum opportunity? That shift in question changes everything. The millionaires who borrow at 8% aren't reckless. They're calculated. They're patient. They're using System 2 thinking to execute a strategy that works with economic cycles, not against them. And they're prepared for 2026 in a way that most people simply aren't. If this framework is valuable to you, please hit like. And if you want to understand more about wealth building through market cycles, subscribe for more analysis like this.